The N64 pad is still a polarizing piece of plastic. Even as a pain-huffing toddler, I still knew something felt very off and hated it the second I held it. This same consensus is echoed literally everywhere you look, save for a few spots. Where many were appalled, some people were inspired, with Treasure being the case in point.
Mischief makers!
Ditched the analog stick altogether and focused on using the D and C pads simultaneously to create a memorably unique and challenging platformer.
Shake, shake!
And during the production, a few of the creative leads at the studio started brainstorming on what else they could do with the controller for their next game. They ultimately landed on a method in where you switch your hands off to the left, controlling the D-pad while still firmly gripping the big gray shaft in the center. They figured out that this style fits in naturally for rail shooters, a genre that's massively popular in the arcades but almost non-existent on the platform aside from Star Fox and the belovedly iconic Knife Edge Nose Gunner. And after they finished a prototype, they immediately rushed out to show it to Nintendo, in which they agreed to help out with funding and development of the title. But then complications started hitting the production like a wave of freight trucks as soon as the gates opened. The best part of it all being the absolute colossal balls on Treasure pushing back when being confronted by Nintendo on literally any issue. They'd skip out on meetings and reply to constant delays with "it's out when it's out." And when asked about lowering the difficulty, they suggested that the Nintendo rep should get booted off the project for being a filthy casual. I fucking wish I was joking, but those are their words, not mine. They put up with all the bullshit regardless and finally shipped the game after almost an entire console generation, and I gotta tell ya, the boys did not disappoint. From the moment you start, you're captivated by a surreal landscape of an endless open field, completely engulfed by a warm orange abyss. Controls noticeably feel more natural than they should on a D-pad. Like any other Panzer Fox, you have to shoot down targets while avoiding projectiles. What separates it is the added emphasis on platforming and melee combat, with your character being forever glued to the ground. It's one of the most mechanically engaging shooters I've played in a long while, something that's fairly absent in a lot of these kinds of games that mostly rely on spectacle to keep you hooked, which shit and poop ain't no slouch in either. The enemy count at times can get real fucking crazy and completely obliterate the frame rate, and this is all on top of the game looking as stunning as it is, being a late gen title taking advantage of the console. The whole game features a flat shaded art style similar to the Legends games, allowing for clean and sharp visuals especially when upscaled. Character models do be looking kinda ugly though. All of it presented with a heavy cinematic flair that transcends into the gameplay. I think a dynamic camera is often overlooked, but it's an integral part of making a good rail shooter, with it being the main component that conveys presence, emotion, and action. I make note of this since the game excels at it more than any other shooter. Low-angle shots are used for masking the horizon, instilling a sense of anticipation in the player, as well as amplifying the intimidating scale of the genre-staple worm dragons. An overhead is used as a vantage when facing off higher enemy counts, with the level inside the ship emulating that of a surveillance camera. Hell, there's even a lengthy platforming segment where the game frequently zooms in and out of the intensity like a 2.5D side-scroller. The way it sways and transitions through all these states seamlessly goes a long way into gripping the player, like that long, thick pole being flicked around. In contrast, the cutscenes noticeably play it a bit more safe. Still, it is pretty impressive seeing the game use all these hard cuts and animations without it looking remarkably jank.
At least for my standards.
Even with all the chicken scratch, the game is fully voice acted in English, and it's as kino as you'd expect from a foreign English dub.
Good morning, Saki.
Good morning, Iron.
Is he dead? Do you know where we are?
We're on Long Island, aren't we?
Long Island? New York? America?
Thinking of revenge?
The story is surprisingly extensive for this type of game, although it doesn't really tell you any of it since you start off right away in the middle of it all, with the events that follow being real straightforward. It feels like it really wants to tell a more meaningful tale, with relatable themes and some vaguely dark subject matter, but it all ends up being tropey and hokey, as the game just wants you to move along to the next set piece, constantly flashing the skip cutscene button, so they just resort to lazy heart and soul dialogue and call it a day. Which is understandable because holy shit, fucking look at this. Each and every single stage is filled with conceptually unique enemy designs and environments, all of it culminating with intense boss fights featuring some striking imagery. But I can't help but think that I've seen this somewhere before. Pacing of these stages is lightning fast without it ever giving you any room to breathe on account of the difficulty curve. It might seem harsh at first, but you instantly start adapting to each stage's nuances, improving your skill with each playthrough. True to treasure tradition, bosses are numerous and mark the game's highlights, and honestly, they kinda fucking suck. Simplified controls mean more simplified bosses, since there's not much you can do in a fight other than shoot, dodge, and shoot and dodge. That doesn't mean it's all bad. I mean, a few of them have some tight platforming mixed in, and they'll all swiftly kick your teeth in if you're not paying close attention. But sadly, Alien Soldier, this ain't, and it's the biggest strike against the game. The score was done by one Toshiya Yamanaka, who turned in an amazing set of tracks for being just a subcontract at the time. It once again goes the extra mile hyping you up, going all in with nothing but funky jazz fusion influences that were big at the time. Hard guitar riffing and pulsing beats make themselves prominent throughout, giving every track that ever so slight sense of slick edge. It's more than fitting and very catchy at times, but it kinda ends up being a bit flat compared to other treasure games.
Hook me up if you know where to get this shit uncompressed, by the way, because fucking goddamn it, the N64 really doesn't do this shit any favors.
And I think the best thread that ties this game up into a near flawless knot is actually the balanced runtime. The first playthrough, adding in a couple of deaths and maybe a full game over, will take you about 1.5 to 2 hours at the most. Your second or third time around, you'll be able to finish it in under an hour easily. This, in my opinion, boosts the replay value significantly. It's just a fun game to pop in and play from start to finish whenever you want, and hell, there's not even much time wasted with attempts on hard mode.
For me, Sin and Punishment is an amalgamation of the best qualities of a quality arcade shooter distilled into a perfect, solid console title.
And now we get to the part where I explain why you never ever heard about this game in your life. It released in Japan in late 2000, and despite it already having everything in English other than the main menu, the ever so wise and generous Nintendo decided to axe the localization, justifying it with the launch of
the Nintendo Shit Cube
rapidly approaching.
The N64 was old news at that point, and putting any more resources into it would result into an unnecessary loss. Even though it ended up selling about 130,000 copies in Japan alone, why the fuck do you keep doing this, Nintendo?
As a result, the game turned into an instant treasure amongst import circles, while it's being completely unheard of in the mainstream, aside of some cheeky references in Smash. It wasn't until 2007, coincidentally when the game takes place, where it finally got a full English release on the Virtual Console and the Wii, and then that shut down, meaning that right now, the only way of playing this game legally, aside from paying full price on eBay, is on the Wii U. Fucking hell. I really was surprised with just how good this game turned out to be, as I went in totally blind expecting nothing but bad controls and smeared Vaseline graphics just like every other Nintendo 64 game. Just 2 stages in, this game gave Star Fox a straight kick in the cock, and it was already my definitive favorite game on the console. You know, second to Majora, but you know. It's also a pretty special game because not long after this and Ikaruga came out, the quality of Treasure's games just plummeted, making nothing but licensed games like Bleached Assholes that were just barely mid by their standards. And then we arrived at the current year where they haven't released or announced anything else since 2014 other than porting Ikaruga to every platform known to man, as if desperately trying to relive the glory days.